Welcome, fellow wanderers, to a journey across some of the most mysterious waters our planet has ever known. Tonight, we drift together into the heart of the Atlantic, where the warm Gulf Stream carries both ships and secrets, where 3 points on a map have captured human imagination for generations, and where the line between reality and legend becomes as fluid as the ocean itself. You're about to discover why 5 experienced Navy pilots vanished without a trace on a routine training flight. Why a massive cargo ship carrying 300 souls simply disappeared in perfect weather. And why this triangular stretch of ocean continues to whisper its secrets to those brave enough to listen. But before we uncover these mysteries together, let me paint you a picture of paradise. Imagine, if you will, the golden hour approaching over Miami's glittering coastline. The sun hangs low like a jewel suspended between sky and sea, casting long shadows across Biscayne Bay while gentle waves lap against the hulls of countless vessels preparing for their evening journeys. To the southeast, roughly 600 miles across waters that have carried explorers and dreamers for 5 centuries, lies Bermuda, that enchanted cluster of islands where pink coral beaches meet turquoise shallows, where ancient limestone formations hide underwater caves that have never felt sunlight, where British colonial architecture stands as quietly as sentinels watching over harbors that have welcomed sailors since the age of sail. And completing our triangle, nearly 1,000 miles to the southwest, Puerto Rico rises from the Caribbean like an emerald crown. Her mountain peaks pierce the clouds while El Yunque rainforest whispers secrets in a language older than memory. Her coastline cradling bays where Spanish galleons once sought shelter from Atlantic storms. Her people carrying stories passed down through generations about lights that dance above the water and compasses that spin without reason. These 3 points, Miami, Bermuda, Puerto Rico, they form the boundaries of what we call the Bermuda Triangle, though the ocean itself recognizes no such borders. But here's what will surprise you. This region that has spawned countless theories about supernatural forces and alien interventions is, in reality, one of the busiest shipping corridors on Earth. Every single day, hundreds of aircraft crisscross these skies. Every single day, massive cargo ships, luxury cruise liners, and pleasure craft navigate these waters safely, their passengers and crews completely unaware that they're passing through what some consider the most dangerous place on our planet. So what makes this particular stretch of ocean so special, so haunting, so irresistibly mysterious that it has captured our collective imagination for decades? The answer lies not just in what has happened here, but in how we've chosen to remember it. How scattered incidents across centuries of maritime history became woven together into a tapestry of wonder that continues to evolve with each telling. You see, the story of the Bermuda Triangle isn't really about the ocean at all. It's about us, about our deep, primal need to believe that mysteries still exist in a world that science seems to have mapped and measured and explained. It's about our desire to find magic hiding in the spaces between what we know and what we fear, between the comfortable light of certainty and the thrilling darkness of the unknown. But tonight, we won't be seeking easy answers or simple explanations. Instead, we'll let ourselves drift like passengers on an evening cruise, watching the horizon blur into that magical place where sea meets sky, where day surrenders to night, where the rational mind can finally rest and wonder can wash over us like gentle waves against a peaceful shore. The legend began long before anyone had ever heard the phrase Bermuda Triangle. Long before Vincent Gaddis wrote those two words that would bind together centuries of maritime mysteries in 1964, creating a name that would echo through popular culture like a siren's call. Christopher Columbus himself, that intrepid navigator who first dared to sail beyond the edge of the known world, recorded strange observations as he passed through these waters in 1492. His compass needle dancing wildly, pointing in directions that defied everything he understood about navigation. Mysterious lights flickering on the horizon when no land should have been visible. Phenomena that his experienced crew whispered about in hushed tones, crossing themselves and clutching their religious medallions as they watched their instruments betray them. But Columbus was not the last to encounter the inexplicable in these waters. Over the centuries that followed, as wooden sailing ships gave way to steam-powered vessels, as maritime technology advanced and navigation became more precise, reports continued to accumulate like shells washing up on a distant beach. Captains would file reports of compass malfunctions. Pilots would radio control towers about strange fog banks that seemed to appear from nowhere. Ships would send routine messages. And then silence. These incidents, scattered across 500 years of oceanic exploration, might have remained footnotes in maritime records, curiosities mentioned briefly in ship logs and then forgotten. But something remarkable happened in the 20th century. The human imagination, fed by radio broadcasts and newspaper headlines, by Hollywood movies and pulp fiction magazines, began to connect these isolated dots, to see patterns where perhaps only coincidence existed, to weave individual tragedies into a larger narrative of supernatural mystery. And at the heart of this modern legend lies one event that changed everything. One December afternoon in 1945, when 5 Navy torpedo bombers took off from Fort Lauderdale on what should have been a routine training exercise. What happened to Flight 19 that day would launch 1,000 theories, inspire countless books and documentaries, and establish the Bermuda Triangle firmly in our collective consciousness as a place where the normal rules of physics and navigation simply don't apply. But as we prepare to dive deep into that mystery, and into the many others that followed, remember this: we're not here to solve these puzzles, but to savor them, to let their beauty and strangeness wash over us like moonlight on water, to find in their telling not fear, but fascination, not anxiety, but a profound sense of wonder at the magnificent mystery of our world. So settle back now. Let your breathing slow and deepen like the rhythm of distant waves, and prepare to drift with me into waters where imagination meets reality, where the impossible dances with the inevitable, where every question leads not to answers, but to deeper, more beautiful mysteries. First mystery, Flight 19, December 5th, 1945. The war had been over for just 4 months, but Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station hummed with the steady rhythm of military routine. Young pilots, many of them barely out of training, were honing their skills in the clear skies above South Florida, preparing for peacetime service in a world still learning how to breathe again after 6 years of global conflict. The morning dawned crisp and beautiful, with scattered clouds drifting lazily across an azure sky like cotton balls floating on an infinite blue canvas. The kind of December day that makes Florida feel like paradise, when the oppressive summer heat has finally broken and there carries just enough coolness to remind you that winter exists somewhere in the world, even if it seems reluctant to visit this particular corner of the Atlantic coast. Lieutenant Charles Taylor, a veteran pilot with over 2,500 hours of flight time, including combat missions in the Pacific Theater, walked across the tarmac that afternoon with the confident stride of a man who had faced enemy fire and lived to tell about it. At 27 years old, he possessed that particular combination of experience and youth that made him ideal for training newer pilots. Men who looked up to him as someone who had seen action, who had tested his skills against both nature and human adversaries, and emerged victorious. Behind him followed 4 younger aviators, each eager to prove themselves worthy of the wings they wore, each carrying dreams of adventure and service that would have seemed familiar to every generation of military pilots who came before them. Aviation was still young then, remember. The Wright brothers' first flight was barely 40 years in the past, and every man who climbed into a cockpit was still participating in humanity's newest and most thrilling conquest of the natural world. The aircraft waiting for them on the runway represented the cutting edge of naval aviation technology. 5 Grumman TBM Avenger torpedo bombers, each one a masterpiece of engineering and American industrial might. These weren't the fragile biplanes of the First World War, but powerful modern aircraft capable of carrying substantial payloads across vast distances, equipped with the latest navigation instruments and radio equipment, built to survive the harsh realities of carrier-based operations in the Pacific. Each Avenger was a beautiful machine in its own right, 14 feet tall at the tail, with wings spanning over 50 feet, painted in the standard navy blue-gray that looked almost silver in the afternoon sunlight. Their single radial engines, powerful enough to pull these 6-ton aircraft through the sky at over 200 miles per hour, sat like jewels beneath cowlings that spoke of both grace and raw mechanical power. The mission brief that morning was designated Navigation Problem Number 1, a routine training exercise that would take the 5 aircraft east from Fort Lauderdale toward the Bahamas, then north along the chain of islands, and finally southwest back to base. A triangular course that experienced pilots could fly almost in their sleep, covering familiar waters that countless training flights had traversed without incident. The weather forecast called for scattered clouds with good visibility, light winds, and calm seas. Perfect flying conditions for a training mission that was expected to last no more than 2 hours. The kind of afternoon where the joy of flight could remind these young men why they had chosen to serve their country from the sky, where the world spread out below them like a living map, painted in shades of blue and green and gold. At 2:10 in the afternoon, the 5 Avengers lifted off from the runway at Fort Lauderdale, their engines roaring in harmony as they climbed into the Florida sky. Lieutenant Taylor led the formation with his usual precision, the 4 student pilots tucked neatly into position behind him, like a flock of mechanical birds following their leader toward the horizon. Radio communications crackled with routine position reports and navigation confirmations as they headed east across the aquamarine waters of the Gulf Stream. For the first 90 minutes, everything proceeded exactly as planned. The flight reached their first checkpoint on schedule, executed their practice bombing runs with textbook precision, and turned north along the Bahamian island chain, just as they had done in dozens of previous exercises. The afternoon sun painted their wings with golden light as they flew over waters so clear and blue they seemed almost artificial, like something from a travel poster advertising Caribbean vacations. But then, at approximately 3:45 in the afternoon, something began to go wrong. The first sign of trouble came in Lieutenant Taylor's voice over the radio, though the words he spoke would haunt investigators for decades to come. "Control tower. This is an emergency. We seem to be off course. We cannot see land. Repeat. We cannot see land." Flight controllers at Fort Lauderdale, accustomed to handling routine training flights, initially assumed this was a minor navigation error that could be quickly corrected with standard radio guidance. After all, experienced pilots like Taylor occasionally became momentarily disoriented, especially when flying over water where landmarks could be scarce and one stretch of ocean might look remarkably similar to another. But Taylor's next transmission revealed something far more troubling. "Both my compasses are out, and I am trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down, and I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale." The Keys. Those scattered islands that string out southwest from the Florida mainland like pearls on a broken necklace, each one separated from its neighbors by channels of water that could easily confuse a pilot if visibility was poor or navigation instruments were malfunctioning. But here's the puzzle that would launch 1,000 theories. If Taylor was truly over the Keys, as he believed, then how had 5 experienced aircraft following a routine flight plan ended up so far off course without anyone noticing? What happened next would transform a simple navigation problem into one of aviation's most enduring mysteries. The radio transmissions between Flight 19 and the ground, recorded by multiple listening stations, revealed a growing sense of confusion and concern that seemed to deepen with each passing minute, as if the very laws of physics and navigation were slowly unraveling around these 5 aircraft and their crews. We'll return to those haunting radio conversations in just a moment. But first, let me ask you this. Have you ever been completely lost, so disoriented that familiar surroundings suddenly seemed alien and strange? Have you ever had the unsettling experience of technology you trusted completely, suddenly failing you when you needed it most? If so, then you can begin to imagine what Lieutenant Taylor and his student pilots were experiencing that December afternoon. Flying over waters that should have been as familiar as their own backyard, yet finding themselves increasingly adrift in a world that no longer made sense. The communications. The radio transmissions that followed would be studied and analyzed for decades, each word scrutinized by investigators searching for clues to one of aviation's most perplexing mysteries. But tonight, as we listen to these voices from the past, let them wash over you not as evidence in a case to be solved, but as echoes of human courage and confusion, as testament to the fragility of our technology and the vast mystery of the world in which we live. Picture, if you will, the radio room at Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station. Banks of equipment humming quietly in the late afternoon light. Operators wearing headphones that connected them to aircraft scattered across hundreds of miles of ocean and sky. These men were accustomed to routine chatter, position reports delivered in calm, professional voices, the comfortable rhythm of military aviation proceeding exactly as planned. But as the afternoon of December 5th wore on, that comfortable rhythm began to fracture. At 4 p.m., just 15 minutes after Taylor's first distress call, his voice crackled through the static again. But now there was something different in his tone. A quality that experienced flight controllers recognized immediately as the sound of a pilot fighting to maintain composure in the face of the inexplicable. We seem to be lost. We can't make out where we are. We think we must be about 225 miles northeast of base. 225 miles northeast. If Taylor's estimate was correct, Flight 19 was somewhere over the open Atlantic, far from any land, in waters deeper than the Empire State Building is tall. But how could 5 aircraft, following a routine training route, have traveled so far off course without anyone realizing it? The flight plan called for them to remain within sight of the Bahamian Islands, never venturing more than a few dozen miles from the shallow, easily recognizable waters of the Caribbean. The control tower's response came back immediately, calm and professional despite the growing concern. Flight 19, this is Tower. What is your present altitude? Please climb to 2,000 feet and set course 270 degrees. 270 degrees, due west. A heading that should have brought the lost aircraft directly back to the Florida coast if they were indeed where Taylor believed them to be. But the next transmission revealed that the situation was far more complex than a simple navigation error. We can't be sure which way is west. Everything looks wrong. Strange. We can't be sure of any direction. Like even the ocean doesn't look as it should. Let those words settle into your consciousness for a moment. Even the ocean doesn't look as it should. What could have caused an experienced pilot, a man who had flown countless hours over these same waters, to feel that the very sea beneath him had somehow transformed into something alien and unfamiliar? As the minutes ticked by, the radio communications revealed a growing sense of disorientation that seemed to affect not just Lieutenant Taylor, but the entire flight. Other voices began to break into the transmissions, the younger pilots expressing their own confusion and concern. Damn it. If we could just fly west, we would get home. Head west. Damn it. But which way was west? In an age before GPS satellites and digital navigation systems, pilots relied on magnetic compasses, radio beacons, and visual landmarks to determine their position. Yet, Flight 19's compasses were reportedly spinning wildly, pointing in directions that made no sense. Radio signals from ground stations seemed to be coming from the wrong directions. And the islands and coastlines that should have provided visual reference points were nowhere to be seen. At 4:25 p.m., Taylor made a decision that would puzzle investigators for generations. Instead of following the control tower's instructions to fly west, he ordered his flight to turn east, toward what he believed was the Florida mainland. Why? We're heading 030 degrees for 45 minutes. Then we will fly north to make sure we are not over the Gulf of Mexico. East, toward the open Atlantic, toward waters that stretched unbroken for 3,000 miles to the coast of Africa. If the flight controllers were correct about Flight 19's position, Taylor was leading his aircraft away from safety, away from land, away from any hope of rescue should their fuel run low. But perhaps Taylor knew something that ground control did not. Perhaps his years of combat experience had taught him to trust his instincts over radio instructions from operators who could not see what he was seeing, who could not feel what he was feeling, as he gazed down at an ocean that somehow no longer looked familiar. The radio traffic continued, growing more fragmented and difficult to understand as the afternoon wore on. Transmissions cut in and out, overlapped with static, faded in and out like voices calling across a vast distance. Multiple radio stations along the eastern seaboard were monitoring the frequency now, operators straining to catch every word, plotting the aircraft's possible position on charts spread across their desks. At 5:15 p.m., more than an hour after the first distress call, Flight 19's radio signals were growing weaker. Taylor's voice, when it could be heard through the static, carried the weight of a man facing an impossible situation with the calm professionalism that had carried him through combat missions in the Pacific. All planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together. 10 gallons. Barely enough fuel for a few more minutes of flight. The Avengers, those powerful torpedo bombers that had lifted off from Fort Lauderdale with such confidence just 3 hours earlier, were now flying on vapor, their engines drinking the last drops of aviation gasoline as they searched desperately for any sign of land. The final transmission from Flight 19 came at 6:04 p.m., just as the sun was setting over the Florida coast. Taylor's voice, calm to the very end, spoke words that would echo through aviation history. All planes, FT-28 out of gas. All planes close up tight. We're going down. And then, silence. The radio frequency that had carried the voices of 14 brave men fell quiet, leaving only the soft hiss of static to mark their passing. Somewhere in the gathering darkness over the Atlantic, 5 aircraft and their crews had vanished as completely as if they had never existed, leaving behind only questions that would haunt investigators and fuel the imagination of mystery seekers for generations to come. But the story of December 5th, 1945 was not yet finished. For even as Flight 19 disappeared into the twilight, another drama was about to unfold, one that would add an even deeper layer of mystery to an already inexplicable tragedy. Sex. Recurmur. As darkness fell over Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station, the quiet efficiency of a military search and rescue operation swung into action. Operations rooms that had been peaceful just hours earlier now hummed with urgent activity as radiomen plotted coordinates. Meteorologists studied weather patterns, and flight planners calculated search grids across hundreds of square miles of ocean. But for all their preparation and professionalism, the men launching this rescue mission faced a fundamental problem. They had no idea where to look. Flight 19's last known position was a matter of speculation and conflicting radio bearings. The aircraft could have gone down anywhere in a vast area stretching from the Bahamas to the open Atlantic, from the Florida Keys to the waters off the Carolina coast. Still, they had to try. 14 men were missing somewhere in the darkness, possibly floating in life rafts, possibly clinging to the wreckage of their aircraft, possibly already claimed by the unforgiving sea. Every minute that passed reduced the chances of finding survivors, and military rescue doctrine was clear. No effort would be spared, no reasonable possibility would be left unexplored. At 7:27 p.m., just over an hour after Flight 19's final transmission, a PBM Mariner rescue aircraft lifted off from Banana River Naval Air Station about an hour's drive north of Fort Lauderdale. The Mariner was perfectly suited for this kind of mission, a large twin-engine seaplane capable of landing on water if survivors were spotted, equipped with powerful searchlights and enough fuel to stay aloft for over 10 hours. The aircraft's crew of 13 men represented some of the finest aviation talent the Navy could offer. Lieutenant Harry Cohn, the pilot in command, was an experienced officer with hundreds of hours in Mariners. His crew included radar operators, radio specialists, and rescue swimmers trained to pluck survivors from rough seas. If Flight 19's crew was still alive somewhere in the darkness, these were the men who would find them. The Mariner, designated Training 49, followed a flight plan that would take them southeast from Banana River toward the Bahamas, then in a systematic search pattern across the most likely area where Flight 19 might have gone down. Their powerful radar could detect objects on the ocean surface from many miles away, while their radio equipment could pick up even the weakest emergency signals from survival radios. For the first 30 minutes of the flight, everything proceeded normally. Training 49 reported their position regularly, confirmed their search pattern with controllers on the ground, and began the methodical process of scanning the dark ocean below for any sign of wreckage or survivors. The weather was deteriorating slightly with scattered rain showers and increasing winds, but nothing that should have posed a serious threat to such a large, well-equipped aircraft. At 7:50 p.m., 23 minutes after takeoff, Training 49 radioed their position as they crossed over New Smyrna Beach, heading southeast toward the search area. The transmission was clear and routine, giving no indication of any problems aboard the aircraft. And then, just as suddenly as Flight 19 had vanished into silence, Training 49 disappeared as well. No distress call, no report of mechanical problems, no indication that Lieutenant Cohn or his crew were experiencing any difficulties whatsoever. The mariners simply stopped responding to radio calls, vanishing from the night sky as completely and mysteriously as the aircraft they had been sent to find. When Training 49 failed to respond to repeated radio calls, rescue coordinators initially assumed the aircraft was simply experiencing radio problems. Mariners were rugged, reliable aircraft, and complete radio failure, while unusual, was not unheard of in military aviation. Perhaps they were flying too low for good radio reception, or perhaps atmospheric conditions were interfering with their transmissions. But as the hours passed and no contact was re-established, the terrible realization began to dawn on the men in the operations center. Tonti. They had lost not just Flight 19, but their rescue aircraft as well. 27 men had now vanished in the span of a few hours, and the search area had doubled in size to include both the original Flight 19 search zone and the route Training 49 had been following when it disappeared. At 10:00 p.m., 3 hours after the mariners' last transmission, a merchant ship captain reported seeing what appeared to be an explosion in the sky, followed by a brief fire on the ocean surface approximately 20 miles off the coast of New Smyrna Beach. The location was roughly consistent with Training 49's last known position, and investigators would later theorize that the mariner might have suffered a catastrophic fuel vapor explosion, a rare but not unknown hazard for aircraft of that era. But no wreckage was ever found. No oil slicks or debris fields that would confirm the merchant captain's sighting. Like Flight 19 before it, Training 49 had simply vanished into the night, leaving behind only questions and the growing sense that something far more mysterious than mechanical failure or pilot error was at work in the waters off the Florida coast. The search that followed would become one of the largest rescue operations in naval aviation history. Over the next 5 days, more than 300 aircraft and dozens of ships combed 250,000 square miles of ocean, from the shallow waters of the Bahamas to the deep Atlantic basin. Coast Guard cutters, Navy destroyers, merchant vessels, and private pleasure craft all joined the effort, their crews scanning the waves for any sign of wreckage or survivors. They found nothing. Not a single piece of debris from either Flight 19 or Training 49. No life rafts, no personal belongings, no oil slicks, nothing that would indicate where 27 men and 6 aircraft had met their fate. It was as if the ocean had simply opened up and swallowed them whole, then closed again without leaving a trace. The official investigation that followed would consume thousands of hours and produce hundreds of pages of testimony and analysis. Every aspect of the flights was examined in minute detail. Weather conditions, aircraft maintenance records, crew qualifications, radio transcripts, radar data. Investigators even considered the possibility of sabotage or enemy action, though the war had been over for months, and no hostile forces were known to be operating in the area. In the end, the Navy's conclusion was as mysterious as the disappearances themselves. The fate of Flight 19 was listed as unknown, while Training 49 was presumed to have suffered an accidental explosion. But these official determinations satisfied no one, least of all the families of the missing men, who were left to wonder how such experienced crews, flying reliable aircraft, could simply vanish without a trace. And so December 5th, 1945, entered the annals of aviation history not as a routine training day, but as the beginning of the modern Bermuda Triangle legend. The day when the ocean off the Florida coast first demonstrated its capacity to make the impossible seem routine, to transform the familiar into the inexplicable, to remind us that for all our technological mastery and navigational precision, we're still small creatures moving across the surface of a vast and mysterious world. As we drift deeper into this story, let the darkness of that December night settle around you like a comfortable blanket. Let the rhythm of the waves wash away the urgency of unanswered questions. For in the end, perhaps the greatest mystery is not what happened to those brave aviators, but how their story continues to capture our imagination, continues to call to us across the decades like voices on the wind, reminding us that wonder and mystery are never more than a horizon away. Atmospheric interlude. Before we continue our journey through the mysteries of the Triangle, let us pause for a moment, like travelers resting beside a peaceful lagoon. Let the tensions of unsolved puzzles dissolve like salt in warm water, and allow your mind to drift across the magnificent stage where all these stories have unfolded, the Atlantic Ocean itself. Picture, if you will, the Triangle's waters on a perfect Caribbean morning, the sun rising over the horizon like a golden coin emerging from a blue velvet purse, painting the sky in shades of coral and amber that no artist has ever quite captured. The ocean stretching endlessly in every direction, its surface ruffled by trade winds that have been blowing across these waters since before humans learned to build boats, carrying with them the scents of distant islands and the promise of adventure beyond the next wave. This is not the dark, forbidding sea of maritime nightmares, but something far more wonderful. A living jewel set in the crown of our planet, where water so clear you can see bottom at 30 feet, mingles with currents so deep they carry their stories from the Arctic to the equator. The Gulf Stream itself flows through the heart of the Triangle like a river within the ocean, a ribbon of warm water 40 miles wide and 3,000 feet deep, moving with such power that it shapes weather patterns across half the globe. Beneath the surface, the ocean floor tells a story that spans millions of years. In the shallow Bahamian waters, ancient coral reefs have built underwater cities more complex and beautiful than anything humans have ever constructed. Elkhorn corals branch toward the surface like underwater trees, while brain corals form perfect spheres that could have been sculpted by master artists. Fish in colors that would make a rainbow jealous dart between the formations. Parrotfish in electric blues and greens, angelfish striped like living art, triggerfish that seem painted by imagination itself. But venture beyond the reef and the seafloor, drops away into abyssal depths that would humble the most ambitious mountain climber. The Puerto Rico Trench, just south of the triangle's boundaries, plunges to depths of over 27,000 feet, deeper than Mount Everest is high, a place where the pressure would crush a human being instantly, where the darkness is so complete that creatures have evolved their own living lights, glowing like stars in an underwater galaxy. In these depths swim beings that seem borrowed from alien worlds. Giant squid with eyes the size of dinner plates, their tentacles reaching 40 feet into the black water. Bioluminescent jellyfish that pulse with cold fire as they drift through the abyss like living lanterns. Deep-sea anglerfish that carry their own fishing lures, glowing beacons in the eternal night of the ocean floor. Yet even in these alien depths, life finds a way to flourish. Volcanic vents on the ocean floor create oases of warmth and chemistry where entire ecosystems thrive without sunlight, where creatures feed on sulfur and heat from the Earth's core, where the very rocks seem to glow with bacterial life that existed long before the first plants learned to photosynthesize. And through it all, the great currents flow, the Gulf Stream carrying tropical warmth toward the Arctic, the Sargasso Sea turning slowly like a vast oceanic wheel, its surface carpeted with floating seaweed that provides shelter for an entire universe of marine life. Sea turtles the size of small cars navigate these currents with an accuracy that would impress any GPS system, following magnetic fields and chemical gradients across thousands of miles of open ocean to return to the exact beaches where they were born. Above the surface, the air itself tells stories. Trade winds that have carried sailing ships for centuries still push clouds across the sky in patterns that experienced mariners can read like books. The afternoon buildup of thunderstorms over the islands, releasing the day's accumulated heat in spectacular displays of lightning and rain. Weather systems that can change from perfect calm to challenging conditions in the space of hours, reminding even modern vessels that the ocean demands respect from all who venture across its surface. This is the stage where our mysteries have played out. Not a supernatural realm of evil forces and otherworldly phenomena, but a natural wonderland so complex and dynamic that it can still surprise us, still humble us, still remind us that our planet is far stranger and more beautiful than our everyday experience suggests. Dolphins play in the bow waves of passing ships, their intelligence evident in the joy they take in racing steel hulls across the waves. Whales breach the surface in explosive displays of power and grace, their songs carrying across hundreds of miles of ocean to communicate in a language we are only beginning to understand. Flying fish burst from the water like silver arrows, gliding on gossamer fins before disappearing again into the blue depths. And, throughout it all, ships pass safely. Cruise liners carrying thousands of passengers on journeys of discovery and relaxation. Cargo vessels moving the goods that connect our global economy. Fishing boats following tradition that stretch back generations, private yachts carrying adventurers seeking their own encounters with the sublime beauty of the open ocean. The Triangle sees hundreds of flights each day, aircraft following invisible highways in the sky as precisely as cars follow roads on land. Pilots navigate by satellite signals accurate to within feet, their instruments monitored by ground controllers who can track their progress across thousands of miles. Modern aviation has made flying through the Triangle as routine as driving to the grocery store, yet the beauty visible from 30,000 feet still takes the breath away. The impossible blue of deep water giving way to the pale green of shallow reefs, the scattered emeralds of coral islands set like jewels in settings of white sand and turquoise shallows. This is the real triangle, not a place of supernatural danger, but a corner of our world where natural beauty and human courage have intersected for centuries, where the mysteries that occasionally arise serve not to frighten us, but to remind us that wonder still exists, that our planet still holds secrets waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to look beyond the horizon. Let that beauty wash over you now like warm water lapping at a tropical shore. Let the rhythm of the waves slow your heartbeat to match the eternal pulse of the ocean. For in understanding the triangle's true nature, we begin to understand something deeper about ourselves and our relationship with the magnificent, mysterious world we call home. Maritime mysteries. Now, as the evening deepens and our journey carries us further into the heart of these ancient waters, let us turn our attention to the ships that have crossed this oceanic stage. Vessels great and small that have written their own chapters in the triangle's long history, some completing their journeys safely, others leaving behind only questions that echo across the decades like foghorns calling through the mist. USS Cyclops. The year was 1918. The Great War still raged across Europe, though its end was finally approaching like dawn after the longest night in human memory. The Atlantic Ocean had become a highway for American industry, carrying the materials of war from the New World to the Old, where millions of young men faced each other across muddy battlefields that would forever change the course of human history. Into this wartime drama sailed the USS Cyclops, a massive naval cargo vessel that represented everything America had learned about moving heavy cargo across vast distances. At 542 feet long and displacing over 19,000 tons when fully loaded, she was one of the largest ships in the United States Navy, built specifically to carry the raw materials that modern warfare demanded in unprecedented quantities. The Cyclops was not a beautiful ship in the classical sense. She was purely functional, her hull designed for capacity rather than grace, her superstructure dominated by massive cargo holds, and the derricks needed to load and unload her precious cargoes. But there was a certain honest nobility in her ungainly proportions, the dignity of a working vessel built to serve her country in time of need, to carry the burdens that lighter, faster ships could not bear. Captain George Washington Worley commanded the Cyclops with the authority of a man who had spent his life learning the ocean's moods and respecting its power. Born in Germany but naturalized as an American citizen, Worley possessed that particular combination of old world seamanship and new world ambition that characterized many merchant mariners of his era. His crew trusted him implicitly, and his superiors in the Navy knew him as a competent officer who delivered his cargoes on time and intact. On March 4, 1918, the Cyclops departed Barbados bound for Baltimore, her cargo holds packed with over 11,000 tons of manganese ore. Manganese, a vital ingredient in steel production, desperately needed by American factories producing weapons and ammunition for the war effort. The ship rode low in the water under this enormous load. Her draft increased to the point where her deck was only a few feet above the ocean surface. Perhaps that should have been a warning. Perhaps Captain Worley should have recognized that his ship was dangerously overloaded, that the tons of ore in her holds had pushed the Cyclops beyond her safe operating limits. But hindsight is a luxury that mariners at sea cannot afford, and wartime demands often required accepting risks that peacetime captains would never consider. The weather forecast for their route looked favorable. March in the Atlantic could be challenging, But the latest reports showed calm seas and light winds, perfect conditions for a heavily loaded cargo vessel making the 1,000-mile journey from the Caribbean to the Chesapeake Bay. The Cyclops should have been able to make the voyage in 4 days, arriving in Baltimore by March 8th with her precious cargo intact. Captain Worley's final message was transmitted on March 4th, just hours after departing Barbados. Weather fair, all well. 4 simple words that would become one of the most haunting communications in maritime history. The last human contact with a ship carrying over 300 souls toward an appointment with mystery. What happened next remains one of the sea's most enduring puzzles. The Cyclops, with her experienced crew, valuable cargo, and massive steel hull, simply vanished without a trace. No distress calls were received by any radio station along the eastern seaboard. No wreckage washed ashore on any beach from Florida to Nova Scotia. No oil slicks or debris fields were spotted by the hundreds of vessels that plied the same shipping lanes. When the Cyclops failed to arrive in Baltimore on schedule, Navy officials initially assumed she had been delayed by mechanical problems or rough weather. Ships of that era were not equipped with the sophisticated communication systems we take for granted today, and it was not uncommon for vessels to arrive days behind schedule without having been able to notify their destinations. But as the days turned into weeks, and still no word came from the missing ship, a terrible realization began to dawn on maritime authorities. The Cyclops had vanished as completely as if she had never existed, taking with her not only a desperately needed cargo of strategic materials, but 306 human beings who would never see their families again, never share the stories of whatever had befallen them in the deep waters between Barbados and Baltimore. The search that followed was necessarily limited by the technology and resources of 1918. No aircraft were available for aerial reconnaissance. No sophisticated sonar systems could probe the ocean depths. Ships could only search by eye, scanning the horizon for any sign of wreckage or survivors, following the most likely route the Cyclops would have taken, and hoping against hope that some trace of the missing vessel would reveal itself. They found nothing. The Atlantic had swallowed one of the largest ships in the American fleet without leaving so much as a cork float to mark her passing. It was as if the ocean had simply opened up beneath the Cyclops, then closed again over the spot where she had been, erasing all evidence of her existence as thoroughly as waves erase footprints from a sandy beach. Theories arose almost immediately, as they always do when tragedy strikes without explanation. German U-boats were prowling the Atlantic in 1918, sinking Allied shipping with ruthless efficiency. Perhaps the Cyclops had fallen victim to a torpedo attack, though no German submarine captain ever claimed credit for such a significant kill. Perhaps she had struck a one of the hundreds of floating explosives that drifted like deadly seeds across the wartime ocean. But other possibilities seemed equally plausible. The Cyclops had been dangerously overloaded, her cargo of manganese ore creating stresses that her hull might not have been designed to withstand. Perhaps she had broken apart in heavy seas, her back snapping under the weight of her cargo like a stick bent too far. Perhaps a sudden shift in her load had caused her to capsize so quickly that no one aboard had time to send a distress signal. Or perhaps, and this was the theory that would eventually link the Cyclops to the growing legend of the Bermuda Triangle, something else entirely had occurred in those deep waters between the Caribbean and the American coast. Something that defied conventional explanation. something that transformed a routine cargo voyage into an enduring mystery that continues to puzzle maritime investigators more than a century later. The families of the missing men waited for news that would never come. Wives watched for telegrams that would never arrive. Children asked when their fathers would return from voyages that had no end. The Cyclops had carried away not just manganese ore, but dreams and plans and futures that would remain forever suspended in the moment when weather fair, all well, faded into eternal silence. The British Airways tragedies. 30 years after the Cyclops vanished into maritime history, the skies above the Triangle would witness mysteries that seemed to echo that earlier disappearance. The year was 1948, and aviation had advanced far beyond the primitive biplanes of the First World War. Powerful, sophisticated aircraft now crossed the Atlantic regularly, carrying passengers in comfort and safety that earlier generations could never have imagined. British Overseas Airways Corporation operated some of the finest aircraft of the era. Their fleet of Aviator Tudor aircraft represented the cutting edge of British engineering, four-engine airliners designed to compete with the best that American manufacturers could offer. These were not experimental aircraft or hastily converted military planes, but purpose-built passenger airliners operated by experienced crews who had learned their trade during the crucible of wartime flying. On January 30th, 1948, BOAC Flight 680, operating under the call sign Star Tiger, prepared for departure from Santa Maria in the Azores. The aircraft, a sleek Tudor Ivo airliner, carried 25 passengers and 6 crew members on the final leg of a journey from London to Havana, with a scheduled stop in Bermuda for fuel and customs clearance. Captain Brian McMillan, the pilot in command, was exactly the kind of aviator that passengers wanted at the controls of their aircraft. Experienced, calm, thoroughly professional, with thousands of hours in his logbook and a reputation for safety that had earned him command of BAC's most important routes. His crew included navigator and radio operator specialists who represented the finest training that British aviation could provide. The Tudor itself was a beautiful aircraft. Elegant lines that spoke of speed and efficiency, 4 powerful engines that could carry her across vast distances at altitudes where weather was rarely a concern. Her pressurized cabin allowed passengers to travel in comfort even at 20,000 feet. While her sophisticated navigation equipment included the latest radio beacons and direction-finding apparatus. The flight plan called for a direct route from Santa Maria to Bermuda, a distance of approximately 2,000 miles across the open Atlantic. Under normal conditions, the Tudor's cruising speed of over 200 miles per hour would allow her to complete the journey in less than 10 hours, arriving in Bermuda with adequate fuel reserves for any delays or course corrections that might be required. Weather conditions along the route appeared favorable. The latest meteorological reports showed scattered clouds and light winds, with no significant storm systems between the Azores and Bermuda. Perfect flying weather for a long overwater flight, the kind of conditions that made commercial aviation seem as routine as riding a train across the countryside. Star Tiger lifted off from Santa Maria at 10:30 p.m. local time, her engines roaring in perfect harmony as she climbed into the clear Atlantic night. Radio contact with the Azores control tower remained strong as she headed west across waters that stretched unbroken to the American coast. Everything proceeded exactly according to plan, with position reports coming in right on schedule and Captain McMillan's voice calm and professional as he updated controllers on his progress. For the first several hours of the flight, Star Tiger performed flawlessly. She maintained her assigned altitude and heading, her engines running smoothly, her passengers settling in for the long overnight journey to Bermuda. Radio transmissions indicated no problems with navigation equipment, weather conditions, or aircraft systems. It was, by all accounts, a routine commercial flight proceeding exactly as thousands of such flights had before it. But then, as dawn approached over the Atlantic, something began to go wrong. At 3:15 a.m., roughly 5 hours into the flight, Captain McMillan radioed that he was experiencing heavy headwinds and would be arriving in Bermuda approximately 1 hour behind schedule. The delay was not unusual for long-range flights of that era, and controllers in Bermuda acknowledged the message without concern. At 4 a.m., Star Tiger transmitted another position report, placing the aircraft approximately 400 miles northeast of Bermuda. The signal was clear and strong with no indication of any emergency aboard the aircraft. Captain McMillan confirmed that he was descending to a lower altitude to avoid headwinds and estimated his arrival time in Bermuda at approximately 6. That transmission was the last anyone ever heard from Star Tiger. When 6 a.m. came and went without the Tudor appearing over Bermuda's skyline, air traffic controllers began attempting to establish radio contact. Their calls went unanswered. The frequency that had carried Captain McMillan's calm, professional voice just 2 hours earlier now carried only static. The search that followed would become one of the largest aerial rescue operations in Atlantic history. Royal Navy ships, United States Coast Guard cutters, and aircraft from multiple nations combed nearly 300,000 square miles of ocean, scanning the waves for any sign of wreckage or survivors. The search area covered everything from the shallow waters around Bermuda to the deep Atlantic basin, where the ocean floor plunges to depths of over 12,000 feet. They found nothing, not a single piece of debris from Star Tiger. No life rafts, no seat cushions, no personal belongings that might have floated to the surface after a water landing or crash. The Tudor Fu and her 31 souls had vanished as completely as if they had never existed, leaving behind only the echo of radio transmissions and the grief of families who would spend the rest of their lives wondering what had happened in those final hours over the Atlantic. But the Triangle's appetite for British aviation had not been satisfied. Almost exactly 1 year later, on January 17, 1949, another BOAC Tudor would follow Star Tiger into mystery. BOAC Flight 681, call sign Star Ariel, departed Bermuda bound for Kingston, Jamaica, carrying 13 passengers and 7 crew members on what should have been a routine morning flight. Captain John McPhee, like his colleague who had commanded Star Tiger, was an experienced aviator with an impeccable safety record. The aircraft was a Tudor 4 identical to the one that had vanished the previous year, maintained to the highest standards, and equipped with the latest navigation and communication equipment. Weather conditions on the morning of January 17th were perfect. Clear skies, light winds, unlimited visibility. The kind of flying weather that made commercial aviation seem as safe and predictable as surface transportation. Star Ariel's route would take her southwest from Bermuda toward Jamaica, following established airways over waters that saw hundreds of flights each year without incident. The takeoff from Bermuda proceeded normally, with Captain McPhee reporting his departure at 7:44 a.m. and confirming his flight plan with air traffic controllers. Radio contact remained strong as Star Ariel climbed to her cruising altitude and set course for Jamaica. Her first position report came in exactly on schedule, placing the aircraft 75 miles southwest of Bermuda and proceeding normally toward her destination. At 8:25 a.m., less than an hour after takeoff, Star Ariel transmitted her second position report The message was routine and professional, confirming the aircraft's position and estimated arrival time in Kingston. Captain McPhee's voice showed no indication of any problems aboard the aircraft. Everything was proceeding exactly according to plan. That transmission was Star Ariel's last. When the aircraft failed to report her next scheduled position 30 minutes later, controllers in Bermuda began attempting to establish contact. Their calls met with silence. The radio frequency that had carried routine navigation reports just minutes earlier now carried only the soft hiss of static that marked another aircraft's passage into mystery. 2 Tudor aircraft. 2 experienced crews. 2 routine flights that should have been completed without incident. Both vanished within a year of each other in the same general area, leaving behind no wreckage, no distress signals, no clues to their fate. The coincidence was too remarkable to ignore, too disturbing to dismiss as mere statistical anomaly. The investigations that followed would consume thousands of hours and produce volumes of testimony and technical analysis. Every aspect of both flights was examined in microscopic detail. Aircraft maintenance records, crew qualifications, weather data, radio transcripts. Investigators even considered the possibility of sabotage or deliberate destruction, though no evidence of such action was ever found. In the end, the official conclusion was as unsatisfying as it was inevitable. Both aircraft were presumed to have suffered unknown accidents over the Atlantic, their exact fate destined to remain one of aviation's most enduring mysteries. But for those who were beginning to notice patterns in the Triangle's history, the loss of Star Tiger and Star Ariel represented something more than isolated tragedies. They were evidence of forces at work in these waters that defied conventional explanation, phenomena that could make even the most modern aircraft vanish as completely as sailing ships had disappeared in centuries past. Maritime puzzles. As the decades passed and maritime technology advanced far beyond what earlier generations could have imagined, the Triangle continued to write new chapters in its catalog of mysteries. Ships equipped with sophisticated radar and radio systems, vessels built with redundant safety systems and operated by crews trained to handle any conceivable emergency, would occasionally join the ranks of the missing, adding their names to a list that stretched back centuries. In February 1963, the SS Marine Sulphur Queen departed Beaumont, Texas, bound for Norfolk, Virginia, carrying a cargo that was as dangerous as it was valuable. 15,000 tons of molten sulfur, heated to over 275 degrees Fahrenheit, and stored in specially designed holds that maintained the material in liquid form throughout the voyage. The ship herself was a converted World War II tanker, modified specifically for this hazardous but profitable trade route. The Marine Sulphur Queen was no stranger to these waters. She had completed this same voyage dozens of times without incident, her experienced crew well versed in the special precautions required when carrying such a volatile cargo. Captain V.J. Fanning commanded the vessel with the authority of a mariner who understood both the profits and perils of his chosen trade. For the first 2 days of the voyage, everything proceeded normally. The ship maintained her scheduled speed and course. Radio reports confirmed her position at regular intervals, and the molten sulfur cargo remained stable in its specially heated holds. Weather conditions were favorable, with calm seas and light winds that made for pleasant sailing along the Gulf Coast and around the Florida Keys. On February 4th, 5 days after departing Beaumont, the Marine Sulphur Queen transmitted her routine position report, placing her approximately 230 miles west of Key West. The message was brief and professional, giving no indication of any problems aboard the vessel. Her estimated arrival time in Norfolk remained unchanged, and radio operators noted nothing unusual in the transmission. That report was the last anyone ever heard from the Marine Sulphur Queen. When the ship failed to arrive in Norfolk on schedule, Coast Guard officials initially assumed she had been delayed by mechanical problems or weather. But as hours turned into days without any communication from the missing vessel, a massive search and rescue operation swung into action. The search revealed only tantalizingly small clues. A few life preservers bearing the ship's name washed ashore on Florida beaches. Some debris that might have come from the vessel's superstructure was spotted floating in the Gulf Stream. But of the ship herself and her 39-man crew, no trace was ever found. The Marine Sulphur Queen had vanished as completely as vessels half her size, taking with her not only human lives but thousands of tons of dangerous cargo that posed environmental risks if released into the ocean. Investigators theorized that the ship might have suffered a catastrophic explosion, possibly caused by sulfur vapors igniting in her cargo holds. The few pieces of debris recovered showed signs of fire damage, supporting the theory that some kind of conflagration had consumed the vessel so quickly that no distress signal could be transmitted. But the complete absence of wreckage remained puzzling. Even a massive explosion should have left more evidence of the ship's destruction. 3 years later, in 1966, the Triangle claimed another vessel in circumstances that seemed almost deliberately mysterious. The MV Joyita, a merchant ship carrying passengers and cargo between Samoa and the Tokelau Islands, was found floating partially submerged and completely abandoned several weeks after departing on what should have been a routine 2-day voyage. The discovery of the Joyita created more questions than it answered. The ship was found listing heavily to starboard, her upper deck awash, but still afloat, despite having been abandoned by her 25 passengers and crew. Her cargo holds were flooded, her engines silent, but there is no obvious damage that would explain why everyone aboard had taken to the lifeboats in what appeared to be calm weather conditions. Most puzzling of all, the ship's logbooks and navigation equipment were missing, along with all the lifeboats and emergency equipment. It was as if the passengers and crew had carefully and deliberately abandoned ship, taking with them everything that might explain their reasons for doing so. No bodies were ever found, no lifeboats ever recovered, no survivors ever located to tell the story of what had happened aboard the Joyita during her final voyage. More recently, in December 1967, the Triangle demonstrated that its appetite for mystery remained undiminished by the passage of time. The cabin cruiser Witchcraft, a 23-foot pleasure craft, departed Miami bound for a brief evening cruise to view the city's Christmas lights from the water. Aboard were experienced boatman Dan Burak and his friend, Father Patrick Horgan, both familiar with local waters and the kind of short recreational trips that South Florida boaters undertook routinely. Less than an hour after departure, Burak radioed the Coast Guard to report that his boat had struck something underwater and was experiencing mechanical problems. The transmission was calm and professional, with no indication of immediate danger. Burak requested Coast Guard assistance, but emphasized that the Witchcraft was in no immediate danger of sinking, protected by built-in flotation that made her virtually unsinkable. Coast Guard rescue boats reached the reported position within 19 minutes of receiving Burak's distress call. They found calm seas, good visibility, and absolutely no trace of the Witchcraft or her 2 occupants. Despite an intensive search that continued for days and covered hundreds of square miles of ocean, no wreckage, no debris, no sign of the missing vessel was ever found. The disappearance was particularly puzzling because of the short time frame involved. Less than 20 minutes had elapsed between Burak's distress call and the arrival of rescue vessels. Even if the Witchcraft had suffered catastrophic damage and sunk immediately after the radio transmission, some trace of the vessel should have remained on the surface. Life jackets, seat cushions, fuel slicks, something to mark the spot where she had gone down. Instead, the rescuers found only empty ocean, as if the Witchcraft had simply dissolved into the warm Florida waters, taking her 2 occupants with her into whatever realm of mystery claimed vessels that ventured into the Triangle's domain. These modern disappearances, occurring in an era of sophisticated communication and navigation equipment, served to remind mariners that the ocean's capacity for mystery had not been diminished by technological progress. If anything, the contrast between our advanced capabilities and our continued vulnerability to the unknown made these incidents even more unsettling, more difficult to explain away as the inevitable result of primitive equipment or inadequate safety procedures. Each missing vessel added another layer to the Triangle's growing legend, another thread in the tapestry of mystery that writers and researchers would weave into increasingly elaborate theories about supernatural forces and otherworldly influences. Perhaps the real mystery was simpler and more profound. Perhaps these disappearances served to remind us that despite all our technological mastery, despite our GPS satellites and sonar systems and emergency beacons, we remain small creatures moving across the surface of a vast and ultimately unknowable world. As we continue our gentle journey through these troubled waters, let the rhythm of the waves wash away any anxiety these stories might have generated. For in the end, these mysteries serve not to frighten us, but to inspire wonder, to remind us that our planet still holds secrets, still harbors phenomena that challenge our understanding, still offers adventures for those brave enough to venture beyond the safe harbors of absolute certainty, theories, and wonder. Now, as our evening deepens and the stars begin to emerge like diamonds scattered across black velvet, we turn our attention to the countless theories that have blossomed around these maritime mysteries like night-blooming flowers opening to catch the moonlight. Each explanation tells us as much about human imagination as it does about the Triangle itself, revealing our eternal desire to find meaning in the inexplicable, to weave stories that can contain the vastness of the unknown. These theories drift through our collective consciousness like clouds across the night sky, some grounded in scientific possibility, others reaching toward realms that science has yet to explore, all of them born from humanity's refusal to accept that some questions might remain forever unanswered. Tonight, we'll explore these ideas not as competing claims to truth, but as expressions of wonder, as testament to our species' magnificent capacity for imagination and hope. Lost civilizations. Let us begin our exploration in the realm of ancient memory, where the boundary between history and legend becomes as fluid as the tide. In the early decades of the 20th century, a man named Edgar Cayce began to speak of things that conventional archaeology insisted could not be. Sleeping peacefully in a trance-like state, this humble photographer from Virginia would describe civilizations that had flourished and fallen thousands of years before recorded history began, speaking of technologies and wisdom that seemed to come from another world entirely. Among Cayce's most compelling visions were those of Atlantis, not the philosophical allegory that Plato had described, but a real civilization that had existed in the Atlantic Ocean, a culture that had achieved mastery over forces of nature that modern science was only beginning to understand. According to Casey's sleeping revelations, Atlantis had been a society of incredible sophistication, where crystal technologies could harness and focus energy in ways that made their cities shine like stars and their vessels travel without conventional propulsion. But perhaps most intriguingly for our story, Casey predicted that evidence of this lost civilization would begin to surface near Bimini in the Bahamas in the late 1960s. He spoke with quiet certainty of stone structures beneath the waves, of ruins that would emerge from their watery graves to remind humanity of its forgotten past. Most dismiss these predictions as the fantasies of an overactive imagination, but in 1968, something remarkable occurred that would forever link Casey's visions to the Bermuda Triangle mystery. Dr. J. Manson Valentine, a marine archaeologist and museum curator, was flying over the shallow waters near North Bimini when he spotted something that made him radio his pilot to circle back for another look. Below them, visible through the crystal-clear Caribbean water, lay what appeared to be a massive stone roadway. Blocks of limestone arranged in patterns too regular to be natural, too purposeful to be coincidental, stretching across the ocean floor like the remnants of some ancient construction project. The discovery would become known as the Bimini Road, though whether it was truly a road, a wall, a ceremonial platform, or something else entirely remained a subject of passionate debate. When divers descended to examine the structure more closely, they found blocks of stone weighing several tons each, fitted together with a precision that spoke of deliberate human construction. Some of the stones showed evidence of tool marks, while others had been shaped in ways that seemed to serve specific architectural purposes. Could this be the evidence that Casey had predicted? Could the shallow waters of the Bahamas actually conceal the remnants of a civilization that had flourished when the sea level was hundreds of feet lower than it is today? The possibility sent ripples of excitement through communities of researchers and mystics who had long believed that humanity's past held secrets far more wonderful than conventional history suggested. The crystal technology that Casey had described began to capture imaginations in ways that seemed to offer explanations for the triangle's mysteries. If ancient Atlanteans had indeed developed methods of focusing and amplifying energy through crystalline structures, if such technologies still existed somewhere beneath the waves, perhaps they could account for the strange compass readings and electronic malfunctions that pilots and mariners had reported for centuries. Imagine, if you will, vast crystal formations lying dormant on the ocean floor, their lattice structures still capable of interacting with electromagnetic fields in ways that our modern science has yet to understand. Perhaps these ancient technologies occasionally awakened from their slumber, sending pulses of energy through the water and air above, creating zones of interference that could disrupt navigation instruments and communication systems. The theory was beautiful in its simplicity, romantic in its implications. It suggested that the triangle's mysteries were not supernatural phenomena, but evidence of a forgotten chapter in human achievement, proof that our ancestors had once possessed wisdom that we were only now beginning to rediscover. According to this view, the disappearances and strange occurrences were not signs of danger, but invitations to remember, calls from the deep asking us to reclaim our birthright as children of a civilization that had once moved freely between sea and sky and star. Some researchers began to report that the Bimini Road was just the beginning. Other underwater structures were discovered throughout the Caribbean, formations that seemed too geometric to be natural, too weathered to be recent. Complex arrangements of stones that suggested harbors and plazas, foundations that might once have supported buildings whose purposes we could only imagine. The crystal theory expanded to encompass not just Atlantean technology, but natural crystal formations that might exist in the triangle's waters. Large quartz deposits on the ocean floor could theoretically create powerful electromagnetic fields, especially if they were arranged in specific configurations or subjected to geological stresses that caused them to resonate at particular frequencies. These ideas captured the imagination because they offered hope. Hope that humanity's past was more glorious than we had been taught. Hope that the mysteries of the triangle pointed not toward danger, but toward discovery. Hope that somewhere in the depths of our genetic memory lay the keys to technologies that could transform our relationship with the natural world. Whether the Bimini Road represents evidence of ancient engineering or simply an unusual geological formation remains a subject of scholarly debate. Whether Edgar Cayce's visions reflected genuine psychic insights or the projections of a deeply imaginative mind continues to divide those who study such phenomena. But the power of these ideas to inspire wonder and curiosity remains undimmed. Their ability to make us question our assumptions about the past as strong today as it was when they first emerged into public consciousness. For in the end, the value of these theories may lie not in their literal truth, but in their capacity to expand our sense of possibility, to remind us that the world contains mysteries that transcend the boundaries of conventional knowledge, to suggest that the triangle's secrets might be not supernatural threats, but invitations to remember who we truly are and where we truly come from. Cosmic connections. As our evening journey carries us deeper into realms of speculation and wonder, we encounter theories that reach beyond the earthly domain entirely, suggestions that the triangle's mysteries might originate not from hidden civilizations beneath the waves, but from intelligences and phenomena that traverse the vast spaces between the stars. These ideas, born from humanity's ancient desire to believe that we are not alone in the universe, offer explanations that are as thrilling as they are challenging to conventional understanding. The triangle's history of unusual aerial phenomena stretches back centuries, long before the modern UFO era began. Christopher Columbus himself recorded observations of strange lights dancing above the horizon, luminous phenomena that his experienced navigators could not explain through conventional meteorology or astronomy. These early reports established a pattern that would persist through the centuries, a tradition of witnesses describing objects and lights that seemed to operate according to principles unknown to earthly science. In the decades following World War II, as public awareness of possible extraterrestrial visitation began to grow, the Triangle's reputation as a hotspot for unusual aerial activity intensified. Pilots flying through the region began reporting encounters with objects that moved in ways that defied conventional aerodynamics, craft that could accelerate instantaneously, change direction without apparent momentum transfer, or vanish from radar screens as if they had simply ceased to exist. Some witnesses described encounters so close and detailed that they forever changed their understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos. Veteran aviators, men whose credibility and experience were beyond question, spoke of aircraft that approached their planes with obvious intelligence, maintaining formation for minutes or even hours before departing with speeds that left conventional jets far behind. But perhaps the most intriguing reports came from those who claimed to have experienced something even more extraordinary than simple sightings. In 1970, pilot Bruce Jernan was flying his Beechcraft Bonanza from Andros Island to Palm Beach when he encountered what he would later describe as an electronic fog that seemed to possess properties beyond anything in terrestrial meteorology. According to Jernan's account, the fog appeared suddenly around his aircraft, forming a tunnel-like structure that seemed to draw his plane forward with invisible forces. As he flew through this ethereal corridor, his navigation instruments began behaving erratically, his compass spinning wildly while his electronic equipment registered readings that made no sense according to conventional physics. Most remarkably, Jernan claimed that the normal 30-minute flight was completed in just 20 minutes, despite strong headwinds that should have extended his journey time. When he landed in Palm Beach, ground control confirmed that his aircraft had appeared on radar suddenly and without explanation, as if materializing from thin air just minutes before touchdown. Jernan's experience became a cornerstone of time portal theories, suggestions that the triangle contained doorways or windows in the fabric of space-time itself. According to these ideas, the region's mysterious disappearances might not represent destruction or death, but transportation to other times or dimensions, inadvertent journeys through cosmic gateways that existed outside the normal flow of temporal experience. The concept was both terrifying and wonderful. Terrifying because it suggested that travelers through the triangle risked being torn from their familiar reality and deposited in times or places where they could never return home. Wonderful because it implied that the universe contained passages and possibilities that transcended the limitations of conventional physics. Doorways to adventure and discovery beyond humanity's wildest dreams. Some theorists suggested that these temporal anomalies might be natural phenomena, distortions in space-time caused by unique combinations of gravitational fields, electromagnetic radiation, and quantum fluctuations that occurred only in specific locations under specific conditions. Around the triangle's position relative to the Earth's magnetic field, its location above deep ocean trenches and geological fault lines, its intersection with powerful ocean currents like the Gulf Stream. All of these factors might combine to create zones where the normal rules of physics became fluid and unpredictable. Others proposed that the anomalies were artificial in origin, either the remnants of ancient technologies left by previous civilizations, or the active interventions of extraterrestrial intelligences that used the triangle as a kind of cosmic way station. According to these theories, the disappearances might represent not accidents, but deliberate selections, choices made by advanced beings who recognized something special in certain individuals or groups and transported them to realms beyond human understanding. The electronic fog phenomenon reported by various pilots seemed to support theories about unknown energy fields operating within the triangle. These strange atmospheric disturbances were described as possessing properties unlike any known weather system. Clouds that seemed to respond to the presence of aircraft, mists that could engulf entire vessels while leaving surrounding areas completely clear. Witnesses spoke of fog banks that appeared to glow with their own internal light, atmospheric disturbances that seemed to pulse with rhythmic energy, clouds that formed geometric shapes or moved against prevailing winds. Some reported that entering these mysterious formations produced sensations of disorientation and time distortion, experiences that left them questioning their own perceptions and memories. The electromagnetic effects reported within these phenomena were particularly puzzling. Compasses that pointed in impossible directions, radio equipment that received signals from stations that should have been far beyond reception range, electronic instruments that displayed readings suggesting the aircraft was traveling at impossible speeds or altitudes. Perhaps most intriguingly, some witnesses reported encounters with intelligences within these electronic fog phenomena, consciousness, or communication that seemed to originate from the atmospheric disturbance itself. Voices speaking in languages that were almost but not quite recognizable, messages that conveyed meaning without using conventional words, sensations of contact with minds that operated according to principles utterly foreign to human experience. These reports challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of consciousness and intelligence, suggesting that awareness might exist in forms and environments that terrestrial science had never considered possible. If the triangle truly served as a gateway for non-human intelligences, if its atmospheric anomalies represented technologies beyond our current understanding, then the region's mysteries might offer glimpses into futures that awaited humanity's continued evolution and exploration. The cosmic connection theories appealed to our deepest longings for transcendence and contact, our desire to believe that the universe contained wonders beyond our current imagination. They suggested that the triangle's mysteries were not problems to be solved, but invitations to expand our understanding of reality itself, doorways to experiences that could fundamentally transform human consciousness and our relationship with the cosmos. Whether these phenomena represent genuine contact with non-terrestrial intelligences, natural anomalies that science has yet to understand, or the projections of human consciousness encountering experiences beyond its current conceptual framework, they continue to inspire wonder and speculation. They remind us that our understanding of the universe remains profoundly incomplete, that mystery and magic might coexist with science and reason in ways that our current paradigms have yet to accommodate. Government mysteries. In the deeper waters of the triangle, where the ocean floor plunges to depths that rival the height of mountains, military secrets rest like sleeping giants beneath miles of dark water. Here, in the realm where national security meets oceanic mystery, we encounter phenomena that blur the line between classified operations and supernatural speculation, where the legitimate needs of defense merge with the eternal human fascination with hidden knowledge. The Atlantic Undersea Test and Evaluation Center, known to those who work there simply as AUTech, sits on the seafloor near Andros Island in the Bahamas like a technological city beneath the waves. This facility, operated by the United States Navy, represents one of the most sophisticated underwater testing ranges in the world, a place where the newest and most advanced submarine technologies undergo trials that will determine the future of underwater warfare. AUTEC's official mission is straightforward enough: to provide a realistic deep-water environment where submarines, torpedoes, and underwater sensors can be tested under conditions that simulate actual combat scenarios. The facility includes underwater tracking ranges, acoustic monitoring systems, and communications networks that allow Navy personnel to observe and record the performance of classified technologies with unprecedented precision. But AUTEC's location within the triangle's boundaries, combined with the inevitable secrecy that surrounds military testing programs, has made the facility a magnet for speculation and theory. Some researchers have suggested that the underwater base serves purposes far beyond conventional weapons testing, that its deep-water laboratories and acoustic monitoring systems might be investigating phenomena that the public is not yet ready to understand. The facility's sophisticated sonar and hydrophone arrays, designed to track the movements of submarines and underwater weapons, are also perfectly positioned to detect any unusual acoustic phenomena that might occur in the triangle's depths. If unknown objects or intelligences truly inhabit these waters, if the ocean floor conceals technologies or artifacts from earlier civilizations, AUTEC's sensors would be among the first to detect their presence. The secrecy that naturally surrounds military operations has created an information vacuum that imagination rushes to fill. When Navy personnel cannot discuss their work, when research results remain classified for decades, when entire programs exist behind walls of bureaucratic silence, the public mind naturally begins to wonder what discoveries might be hidden beneath layers of official denial and administrative discretion. Some theorists have suggested that AUTEC serves as a cover for investigations into the Triangle's anomalous phenomena themselves, that Navy scientists and engineers are actively studying the electromagnetic disturbances, time distortions, and consciousness-altering effects that various witnesses have reported. According to these ideas, the military's interest in the Triangle goes far beyond conventional weapons testing to encompass research into technologies that could revolutionize human understanding of physics and consciousness. The possibility is both thrilling and sobering. Thrilling, because it suggests that official science takes the Triangle's mysteries seriously enough to dedicate significant resources to their investigation. Sobering, because it implies that discoveries of profound importance might be locked away in classified archives, hidden from public view by bureaucratic systems designed to protect national advantage rather than advance human knowledge. Other underwater installations throughout the Triangle add layers of complexity to the mystery. Deep sea research stations, acoustic monitoring posts, submarine cable monitoring facilities. Each represents a legitimate scientific or military purpose, but their combined presence creates a network of sensors and observers that could detect phenomena far beyond their official missions. The Navy's own personnel occasionally contribute to the Triangle's legend through their willingness to discuss unusual experiences during off-duty conversations. Submarine crews speak of sonar contacts that move in ways no known technology can match. Surface vessel operators report radar signatures that appear and disappear without explanation. Aircraft pilots describe electronic interference patterns that seem to follow their planes through areas where no terrestrial source of such interference should exist. These informal reports, filtered through military culture's mixture of professionalism and superstition, carry particular weight because they come from men and women trained to observe and report unusual phenomena with accuracy and detail. Military personnel are taught to distinguish between equipment malfunctions and genuine anomalies, to record observations without embellishment, to maintain objectivity even when confronting experiences that challenge their understanding of reality. The acoustic properties of the Triangle's waters add another dimension to government interest in the region. The deep trenches and underwater canyons create unique sound propagation characteristics that make the area ideal for testing sonar systems and underwater communication technologies. But these same acoustic properties could also reveal the presence of phenomena that operate outside conventional understanding. Hydrophone networks designed to monitor submarine movements might also detect sounds from unknown sources. Recordings of whale songs and dolphin communications occasionally include acoustic signatures that marine biologists cannot identify. Vocalizations that seem to follow patterns, suggesting intelligence, but originating from creatures or technologies that remain unidentified. The electromagnetic signature of the Triangle has also attracted official attention. The region's position relative to the Earth's magnetic field lines, its location above geological formations that might affect electromagnetic propagation, its intersection with atmospheric and oceanic current systems that could influence radio wave behavior. All of these factors make the triangle a natural laboratory for studying electromagnetic phenomena under unique conditions. Military research into electromagnetic pulse effects, radio wave propagation, and electronic warfare technologies would naturally focus attention on regions where electromagnetic anomalies occur regularly. If Triangle truly experiences unusual electromagnetic disturbances, if its atmosphere and water possess properties that affect electronic equipment in unpredictable ways, understanding these phenomena could provide significant advantages in electronic warfare and communication systems. The government's approach to triangle phenomena seems to follow a pattern of public dismissal combined with private investigation. Official statements consistently minimize the significance of triangle mysteries, attributing disappearances to conventional causes and dismissing reports of unusual phenomena as misidentifications or equipment malfunctions. But the continued presence of sophisticated monitoring systems and research facilities suggests that official interest remains high, even if public acknowledgement remains limited. This combination of denial and investigation creates a fertile environment for speculation and conspiracy theories. When government agencies refuse to release detailed information about their triangle-related activities, when Freedom of Information Act requests return documents with significant portions redacted, when military personnel are instructed not to discuss their experiences with unusual phenomena, the public naturally begins to wonder what secrets might be hidden beneath layers of official secrecy. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between the extremes of supernatural speculation and bureaucratic mundanity. Perhaps government agencies are indeed investigating triangle phenomena, but finding explanations that are neither supernatural nor earth-shaking. Perhaps the mysteries that capture public imagination represent natural phenomena that science will eventually understand and explain through conventional principles. Or perhaps the government's interest in the triangle reflects a recognition that the region contains genuine anomalies that could advance human understanding of physics, consciousness, and our place in the universe. Perhaps classified research programs are slowly unraveling mysteries that will eventually transform human civilization, discoveries so profound that they must be revealed gradually to avoid social and economic disruption. In either case, the government's role in triangle research serves to remind us that the boundary between the known and unknown remains fluid, that official knowledge and public understanding often diverge in ways that reflect competing priorities and perspectives. The triangle's mysteries continue to evolve not just through civilian observation and speculation, but through the careful, classified work of scientists and engineers whose discoveries may not emerge into public consciousness for decades to come. Scientific contemplation. As the night deepens around us and our journey through the triangle's mysteries draws toward its peaceful conclusion, it is time to turn our attention to the patient work of science. To the researchers and meteorologists and oceanographers who have spent lifetimes studying these waters, seeking explanations that rest not on speculation or wonder, but on careful observation and rigorous analysis of the natural forces that shape our world. Science approaches mystery not as an enemy to be conquered, but as a puzzle to be understood. Each unexplained phenomenon represents an invitation to expand human knowledge, each anomaly a doorway to discoveries that might transform our understanding of the natural world. In the triangle's case, scientific investigation has revealed a portrait of complexity and beauty that rivals any supernatural explanation for sheer magnificence and awe. Nature's explanations, The weather patterns that sweep across the triangle create a dynamic atmospheric theater that would be impressive, even if it harbored no mysteries at all. Here, where the warm waters of the Caribbean meet the cooler currents of the North Atlantic, where tropical air masses collide with temperate systems flowing down from the American mainland, meteorological drama unfolds on a scale that can humble the most sophisticated aircraft and challenge the most experienced mariners. Picture, if you will, the afternoon development of a typical Caribbean thunderstorm. The morning begins with gentle trade winds carrying moisture from the warm ocean surface, invisible water vapor rising like ghostly columns into the crystalline blue sky. As the sun climbs higher, heating the sea surface and the islands scattered throughout the region, these columns of rising air begin to organize themselves into patterns that meteorologists recognize as the early stages of convective development. By early afternoon, cumulus clouds begin to tower into the sky like white mountains growing from the horizon. These are not the gentle cotton ball clouds of temperate regions, but massive atmospheric structures that can reach altitudes of 40,000 feet or more, their tops spreading into anvil shapes that stretch for miles across the sky. Within these towering giants, updrafts and downdrafts move air at velocities that can exceed 100 miles per hour, creating internal turbulence that would be deadly to any aircraft unfortunate enough to encounter it. The electrical activity within these storm systems can interfere with radio communications and navigation equipment in ways that might seem supernatural to pilots unfamiliar with tropical meteorology. Lightning strikes create electromagnetic pulses that can disrupt electronic instruments from miles away, while the static electricity generated by rapidly moving air masses can make radio communications impossible for hours at a time. But perhaps most dangerous of all are the microbursts and wind shear phenomena that these storms can generate. Sudden downdrafts of cold air can hit the ocean surface and spread outward in all directions at speeds exceeding 70 miles per hour, creating walls of wind that can flip aircraft upside down or drive ships beneath the waves with little warning. These phenomena are invisible to radar and often impossible to predict, occurring and dissipating so quickly that they leave no trace of their existence except the wreckage they create. The white squalls that mariners have feared for centuries represent another meteorological challenge unique to the triangle's geographic position. These sudden, violent windstorms can develop from calm conditions in a matter of minutes, transforming peaceful seas into cauldrons of foam and spray that can overwhelm vessels of surprising size. The storms appear and disappear so quickly that ships just a few miles away might experience perfect weather, while their neighbors struggle for survival against winds that can exceed hurricane force. Modern meteorological satellites and radar systems have revealed the mechanisms behind these phenomena, but their ability to predict exactly when and where such events will occur remains limited. The triangle's weather patterns operate on scales both vast and intimate, influenced by factors ranging from solar radiation and ocean temperature to the precise shape of underwater mountains and the microscopic organisms that live in the surface waters. The Gulf Stream itself plays a crucial role in the triangle's meteorological complexity. This massive current, flowing northeast through the heart of the triangle at speeds that can exceed 5 miles per hour, carries more water than all the world's rivers combined. Its warm waters provide the energy that drives much of the region's weather, creating temperature gradients that can spawn storms or calm them, depending on subtle variations in ocean conditions. The stream's influence extends far beyond simple weather generation. Its powerful current can carry wreckage hundreds of miles from accident sites in a matter of days, explaining why debris from missing aircraft and vessels is often never found despite extensive search efforts. Objects that sink in the triangle's waters might be carried by deep currents to locations thousands of miles from where they went down, settling in ocean trenches or abyssal plains where they will remain hidden until the end of time. The magnetic anomalies that have puzzled navigators for centuries also have scientific explanations rooted in the triangle's unique geological position. The region lies along what geophysicists call the agonic line, one of the few places on Earth where magnetic north and true north align. This means that compass variations that would be normal in most locations appear anomalous to navigators expecting their instruments to behave as they do elsewhere. The underlying geology adds another layer of complexity. The triangle sits above a region where the North American continental shelf drops away into some of the deepest waters in the Atlantic Ocean. The Puerto Rico Trench, just south of the triangle's traditional boundaries, represents one of the deepest points in the entire Atlantic Basin, a submarine canyon that plunges to depths exceeding 27,000 feet. These geological features can affect everything from ocean currents to seismic activity, creating conditions that might influence electromagnetic fields, acoustic propagation, and even atmospheric pressure in ways that modern science is only beginning to understand. The interaction between deep ocean currents, underwater topography, and surface weather patterns creates a system of staggering complexity that challenges even the most sophisticated computer models. The methane gas theories that some researchers have proposed offer particularly intriguing possibilities for explaining certain triangle phenomena. Vast deposits of methane hydrates exist on ocean floors throughout the world, including the deep waters of the triangle region. Under certain conditions, these deposits can release large quantities of gas into the water column, creating areas of reduced water density that could theoretically cause ships to lose buoyancy and sink rapidly. While no direct evidence exists for large-scale methane releases in the triangle, the geological conditions necessary for such events are certainly present. Underwater landslides, seismic activity, or changes in water temperature and pressure could potentially trigger the release of methane deposits, creating temporary zones where the normal laws of buoyancy might not apply. The acoustic properties of these deep waters add yet another dimension to the triangle's scientific complexity. Sound waves behave differently in water of varying temperatures, pressures, and chemical compositions, creating phenomena like deep sound channels that can carry underwater noises for thousands of miles. Sonar operators have occasionally detected sounds that seem to originate from unknown sources, acoustic signatures that might represent geological processes, marine life, or atmospheric phenomena that science has yet to identify and catalog. The triangle's position relative to major atmospheric and oceanic circulation patterns makes it a natural laboratory for studying interactions between air and sea that occur nowhere else on Earth. The meeting of tropical and temperate climate zones, the intersection of major ocean currents, the influence of both continental and island geography, all combine to create conditions that can generate weather and ocean phenomena that are both beautiful and dangerous. These natural explanations don't diminish the triangle's mystery so much as relocate it. Instead of supernatural forces, we find natural systems of breathtaking complexity and power. Instead of otherworldly interventions, we discover planetary processes that operate on scales both vast and intimate. The triangle emerges not as a supernatural anomaly, but as a place where the Earth's natural systems create conditions that can challenge human understanding and humble human technology. Human factors. As we delve deeper into the scientific understanding of triangle phenomena, We must also turn our attention inward, examining the human elements that contribute to both the creation and perpetuation of these mysteries. For in many ways, the Triangle's legend tells us as much about human psychology, perception, and storytelling as it does about any objective phenomena that might exist in these waters. The navigation challenges that confronted earlier generations of pilots and mariners were very real, though they had nothing to do with supernatural forces. Before the advent of GPS satellites and modern electronic navigation systems, determining one's position over open ocean required skills and equipment that left considerable room for error. Dead reckoning, celestial navigation, and radio direction finding all demanded expertise that took years to develop and constant practice to maintain. Consider the situation facing Lieutenant Charles Taylor and Flight 19 on the December afternoon in 1945. Their aircraft were equipped with magnetic compasses that could be influenced by everything from electrical storms to metal objects within the plane itself. Radio navigation beacons were relatively primitive by modern standards, their signals often distorted by atmospheric conditions or interference from other transmitters. Visual navigation over water relied on landmarks that might be obscured by haze, clouds, or the simple fact that one stretch of ocean can look remarkably similar to another. When Taylor reported that his compasses were out, he was describing a phenomenon that was unfortunately common in aviation of that era. Compass deviation could be caused by electrical storms, metal fatigue in the aircraft structure, or simple mechanical failure of the compass mechanism itself. Without reliable instrument guidance, even experienced pilots could become disoriented, especially when flying over featureless ocean, where visual references were scarce. The psychological factors that accompany such disorientation can compound navigation problems in ways that might seem supernatural to outside observers. When pilots or mariners lose confidence in their instruments, when familiar landmarks fail to appear where expected, when radio communications become garbled or unreliable, the stress response can affect decision-making in ways that transform minor problems into major emergencies. Group psychology plays a role as well. When the leader of a formation becomes uncertain, that uncertainty can spread to other crew members, creating a cascade of doubt and confusion that makes rational problem-solving increasingly difficult. The junior pilots in Flight 19 were trained to follow their leader's guidance, but when that guidance became uncertain, they faced impossible choices between following orders and trusting their own instincts. The role of media coverage in shaping public perception of triangle phenomena cannot be overstated. The mysterious disappearance of Flight 19 might have remained a footnote in military aviation history, if not for the way newspapers, radio programs, and later television shows chose to present the story. Each retelling emphasized the most dramatic and inexplicable elements while minimizing or omitting details that might suggest conventional explanations. This process of selective emphasis and dramatic interpretation continues today. When aircraft or vessels encounter problems in the Triangle region, media coverage often highlights the location and mysterious circumstances while downplaying the routine nature of mechanical failures, weather emergencies, or human error. The result is a persistent impression that the Triangle experiences far more mysterious incidents than other comparable regions, even when statistical analysis suggests otherwise. The power of suggestion plays a significant role in how people interpret unusual experiences. When pilots or mariners know they are entering the infamous Bermuda Triangle, they may be more likely to notice and report phenomena that they might otherwise dismiss as routine equipment malfunctions or atmospheric conditions. Heightened awareness can transform ordinary experiences into seemingly supernatural encounters. Modern statistical analysis of triangle incidents reveals patterns that are far less mysterious than popular accounts might suggest. The Coast Guard, which maintains detailed records of all search and rescue operations in the region, reports that the triangle experiences no higher rate of incidents than other comparable areas of high maritime and aviation traffic. When factors like weather patterns, traffic density, and the natural challenges of operating over open ocean are taken into account, the triangle's safety record appears entirely normal. This statistical reality doesn't negate the genuine tragedies that have occurred in triangle waters, nor does it minimize the real navigational and meteorological challenges that the region presents. Instead, it suggests that the triangle's reputation for supernatural danger may be largely a product of human perception and storytelling, rather than objective phenomena. The confirmation bias that affects how we interpret information about the triangle works in multiple directions. Those who believe in supernatural explanations tend to emphasize incidents that seem to support their theories while dismissing or minimizing evidence that suggests conventional causes. Skeptics, conversely, may be too quick to dismiss reports of genuinely unusual phenomena, assuming that all strange experiences must have mundane explanations even when the evidence is ambiguous. The challenge for honest investigation lies in finding a middle path that takes seriously both the reality of human perception limitations and the possibility that some triangle phenomena might represent genuine anomalies deserving of scientific attention. This requires a kind of intellectual humility that acknowledges the fallibility of human observation while remaining open to discoveries that might challenge current understanding. The evolution of triangle stories over time illustrates how human memory and retelling can transform factual accounts into legend. Details that were uncertain in original reports become definitive in later versions. Ambiguous phenomena become clearly supernatural. Possible explanations are forgotten while mysterious elements are emphasized and embellished. The result is a body of triangle lore that may bear little resemblance to the original events that inspired it. Modern communication technology has both helped and hindered accurate reporting of triangle phenomena. While GPS systems and satellite communications have made navigation far more reliable and rescue operations more effective, the internet and social media have also made it easier for inaccurate information and sensationalized accounts to spread rapidly around the world. A minor incident with conventional explanations can become a triangle mystery before the facts have been properly investigated. The commercial interests that have grown up around triangle tourism and entertainment also influence how incidents are reported and interpreted. Books, documentaries, and tourist attractions all benefit from maintaining the triangle's mysterious reputation, creating economic incentives to emphasize supernatural explanations over scientific ones. This doesn't necessarily involve deliberate deception, but it does create cultural pressures that favor mystery over understanding. Perhaps most importantly, the human factors involved in triangle phenomena remind us of our species' complex relationship with mystery and uncertainty. We are creatures who crave both explanation and wonder, who want to understand our world while simultaneously hoping that it contains secrets beyond our current comprehension. The triangle serves as a screen onto which we project these competing desires, a place where we can explore the boundaries between the known and unknown in relative safety. Understanding these human factors doesn't diminish the triangle's significance or beauty. Instead, it reveals the phenomena as a fascinating intersection of natural complexity, technological limitation, psychological perception, and cultural storytelling. The mysteries emerge not as supernatural anomalies, but as testament to the magnificent complexity of both the natural world and human consciousness. Reminders that reality is always richer and stranger than our current theories can encompass. Peaceful resolution. Coexistence of mystery and knowledge confronter. As our long journey through the Triangle's waters draws toward its gentle conclusion, we find ourselves in that magical space between day and night, between the known and the unknown, where mystery and knowledge can coexist like old friends, sharing stories by a comfortable fire. Here, in the soft twilight of understanding, we discover that the greatest wisdom often lies not in choosing between competing explanations, but in appreciating the beautiful complexity that makes multiple truths possible. The Triangle teaches us that science and wonder need not be enemies, that rational explanation and magical thinking can dance together like partners in an eternal waltz, each enhancing the beauty of the other rather than diminishing it. When meteorologists explain the formation of sudden storms, they don't destroy the awe we feel watching lightning illuminate towering clouds. When oceanographers map the Gulf Stream's currents, they don't diminish the majesty of waters that have carried ships and dreams across centuries of human exploration. In fact, scientific understanding often reveals mysteries more profound than any supernatural explanation could provide. The discovery that the Triangle sits above some of the deepest waters in the Atlantic Ocean, where trenches plunge to depths that rival the height of mountains, opens our imagination to realms stranger than any alien visitation. The revelation that methane deposits on the ocean floor could theoretically create zones where the normal laws of buoyancy cease to apply suggests possibilities more wondrous than any ancient curse or mystical force. Consider the simple beauty of a compass needle pointing toward magnetic north. Modern science tells us that this phenomenon results from the interaction between a magnetized piece of metal and the Earth's magnetic field, a force generated by the movement of molten iron in our planet's core thousands of miles beneath our feet. Yet this explanation doesn't diminish the wonder of holding a device that connects us invisibly to the very heart of our world, that allows us to navigate across trackless oceans by following threads of force that stretch from pole to pole. The Triangle's position along the agonic line where magnetic north and true north align becomes not a supernatural anomaly, but a reminder of our planet's dynamic nature. The magnetic poles wander slowly across the landscape of our world, following patterns that reflect the churning of molten rock in realms no human has ever seen. Standing in a place where these invisible forces align is like witnessing a moment of cosmic harmony, a brief alignment in the endless dance of planetary forces. Even the most prosaic explanations for triangle phenomena contain elements of wonder that rival any supernatural theory. The idea that Flight 19 became lost due to compass malfunction and human error doesn't diminish the tragedy of 14 brave men vanishing into the vastness of the Atlantic. Instead, it reminds us of the courage required to venture into skies where navigation depended on instruments no more sophisticated than magnetized needles and radio signals that could be blocked by a passing storm. The weather patterns that sweep across the Triangle reveal natural forces of breathtaking power and beauty. Thunderstorms that tower 40,000 feet into the stratosphere, their tops spreading into anvil shapes that can be seen from hundreds of miles away. Microbursts that drop from these towering giants like invisible hammers, striking the ocean surface with winds that can exceed hurricane force for a few terrifying minutes, before dissipating into memory. White squalls that can transform calm seas into cauldrons of foam and spray in the time it takes to draw a deep breath. Understanding these phenomena doesn't make them less dangerous or less awe-inspiring. If anything, scientific knowledge enhances our appreciation for the delicate balance of forces that normally keep such power in check, for the countless factors that must align to create the perfect storms that can challenge even modern aircraft and vessels. Knowledge becomes not the enemy of mystery, but its faithful companion, helping us appreciate the true magnitude of the forces we encounter. The Triangle's role as one of the busiest shipping corridors in the world adds another layer of wonder to its story. Every day, hundreds of aircraft cross these skies, following invisible highways marked by GPS satellites and radio beacons, their passengers unaware that they're traveling through legendary waters. Massive cargo ships move tons of goods along routes that have been traveled for centuries. Their computer-controlled engines and satellite navigation systems making journeys that once required months of dangerous sailing as routine as driving to the grocery store. This daily traffic of safe passage doesn't diminish the Triangle's mystique so much as transform it. The mystery becomes not why so many vessels disappear in these waters, but how so many complete their journeys safely despite the natural challenges the region presents. The wonder lies not in supernatural forces, but in human ingenuity's triumph over oceanic complexity, in our species' remarkable ability to navigate safely across waters that can generate some of the most challenging conditions on Earth. The Triangle emerges as a testament to both the power of nature and the resilience of human courage. Its waters have witnessed tragedies and triumphs, disasters and discoveries, fears and dreams spanning centuries of maritime history. The region serves as a reminder that our planet remains a place of genuine mystery and beauty, where natural forces operate on scales that can humble human technology while inspiring human imagination. Perhaps the greatest mystery of the Triangle isn't supernatural at all, but perfectly natural. How does this particular stretch of ocean continue to capture human imagination, decades after satellite technology has made navigation routine, and weather forecasting has made sudden storms predictable? Why do stories of mystery and wonder continue to flourish in an age when GPS can pinpoint our location to within feet, and emergency beacons can summon rescue from anywhere on Earth? The answer may lie in our deep human need for mystery itself, for the sense that our world still contains secrets waiting to be discovered, phenomena that challenge our understanding, experiences that remind us how much we still don't know about the universe we inhabit. The Triangle serves as a sanctuary for wonder, in a world that sometimes seems too thoroughly mapped and measured, a place where imagination can still find room to roam freely across the spaces between what we know and what we dream. This doesn't mean abandoning critical thinking or embracing every supernatural theory that emerges from Triangle waters. Instead, it suggests a kind of intellectual humility that can appreciate both the power of scientific explanation and the value of maintaining wonder about phenomena we don't yet fully understand. The Triangle teaches us that mystery and knowledge can coexist peacefully, each enriching the other in ways that make our understanding of the world both more accurate and more beautiful. The continuing journey. As dawn approaches over the Atlantic and our long night's journey through the Triangle's mysteries draws toward its end, we find ourselves changed by the experience. Not frightened by tales of supernatural danger, but enriched by encounters with the magnificent complexity of our world. The Triangle has revealed itself not as a place of evil forces or alien interventions, but as a theater where natural beauty and human courage have intersected for centuries, creating stories that illuminate both the power of our planet and the resilience of our species. The modern triangle bears little resemblance to the mysterious realm of popular imagination. Today's travelers crossing these waters enjoy levels of safety and communication that earlier generations could never have imagined. Commercial aircraft follow precise flight paths monitored by multiple air traffic control centers, their positions tracked continuously by radar systems and GPS satellites. Cruise ships carry thousands of passengers through triangle waters on journeys of discovery and relaxation, their stabilizers and weather routing systems making rough seas a minor inconvenience rather than a mortal threat. The cargo vessels that move the goods connecting our global economy traverse these shipping lanes with reliability that would amaze mariners from earlier eras. Container ships longer than aircraft carriers carry their loads with precision timing that allows just-in-time delivery systems to function across thousands of miles of ocean. Oil tankers and bulk carriers move raw materials and energy with efficiency that makes modern industrial civilization possible. Their computer-controlled systems and satellite communications maintaining safety standards that have dramatically reduced maritime casualties. Private pleasure craft by the thousands enjoy triangle waters for fishing, diving, and pure recreational sailing. Weekend warriors from Miami launch their boats into Biscayne Bay and emerge hours later with tales of perfect weather and excellent fishing. Sailing enthusiasts follow trade winds across the same waters, where Spanish galleons once carried treasure. Their GPS systems and weather fax machines providing navigation and forecasting capabilities that would have seemed magical to Columbus and his crew. The scientific community continues to study triangle phenomena with sophisticated instruments and analytical techniques that reveal new layers of complexity in oceanic and atmospheric systems. Oceanographers use deep-sea submersibles to explore underwater canyons that plunge deeper than the Grand Canyon, discovering ecosystems that thrive in eternal darkness thousands of feet below the surface. Marine biologists study whale migration patterns that carry these magnificent creatures through triangle waters as they follow ancient routes between feeding and breeding grounds. Meteorologists monitor the atmospheric dynamics that create the triangle's unique weather patterns, using satellite imagery and computer modeling to predict storm development with accuracy that saves countless lives each year. The same thunderstorm systems that once struck without warning now appear on weather radar hours before they develop, allowing aircraft to route around dangerous conditions and ships to seek shelter in safe harbors. The Coast Guard maintains rescue capabilities throughout the Triangle that represent the finest traditions of maritime safety and courage. Helicopter crews train constantly to perform rescues in conditions that would challenge the most experienced aviators, while rescue swimmers prepare for deployments that might require them to enter rough seas to save lives. Fast cutters patrol shipping lanes where they can respond to emergencies within hours, rather than the days or weeks that rescue operations required in earlier eras. Yet, despite all these advances in safety and technology, the Triangle continues to serve as a source of wonder and inspiration for those who encounter its natural beauty. Pilots flying overhead on clear nights can see the lights of cities scattered across islands and coastlines like jewels set in black velvet, each light representing human dreams and aspirations that connect across the dark waters. The view from 35,000 feet reveals the Triangle not as a place of danger, but as a stunning example of how human civilization can coexist peacefully with natural grandeur. Scuba divers exploring the coral reefs that flourish in Triangle waters encounter underwater worlds of breathtaking beauty and complexity. Brain corals that took centuries to grow provide foundation for communities of tropical fish whose colors would challenge any artist's palette. Sea turtles that have navigated these waters for millions of years continue their ancient migrations, following instincts that predate human civilization by geological ages. Dolphins play in the bow waves of passing vessels, their intelligence evident in the joy they take from interaction with human travelers. The triangle serves as a reminder that our planet still holds secrets waiting to be discovered by future generations of explorers and scientists. Deep-water research continues to reveal new species and ecosystems that suggest life's incredible adaptability and resilience. Acoustic studies of whale communications hint at complexities in marine intelligence that we're only beginning to understand. Geological surveys of the ocean floor uncover evidence of Earth's dynamic history, written in rock formations that span millions of years. Perhaps most importantly, the triangle represents a kind of democracy of wonder. Its mysteries are accessible to anyone with curiosity and imagination, requiring no special credentials or expensive equipment to appreciate. A child watching clouds build over the horizon can experience the same sense of awe that inspired centuries of triangle legends. A passenger on a commercial flight can look down at waters that have carried human dreams for 500 years and feel connected to the great adventure of exploration that defines our species. The stories we tell about the triangle continue to evolve, reflecting not just our changing understanding of natural phenomena, but our enduring human need for mystery and adventure. Each generation discovers the region anew, bringing fresh perspectives and new technologies to bear on questions that have intrigued humanity for centuries. The mysteries that captivated our grandparents may find scientific explanations, but new mysteries emerge to take their place, ensuring that wonder remains a constant companion to knowledge. The triangle's greatest gift may be its reminder that mystery and understanding can coexist peacefully in a world that sometimes seems too thoroughly explained and cataloged. Here, in these waters where trade winds meet ocean currents, where tropical warmth encounters temperate coolness, where shallow reefs give way to abyssal depths, we find a place that embodies both the complexity of natural systems and the beauty of human curiosity about the world we inhabit. As we complete our journey through these legendary waters, we carry with us not answers, but better questions. Not solutions, but deeper appreciation for the magnificent puzzle of our planet. The triangle has taught us that mystery itself is not a problem to be solved, but a gift to be savored. A reminder that wonder and knowledge can dance together like partners in an eternal celebration of human consciousness, encountering the infinite complexity of the natural world. Extended outro. And so, our long night's journey through the mysteries of the triangle draws to its peaceful close, like a gentle tide receding from a moonlit shore, carrying with it the day's concerns and leaving behind only the soft rhythm of waves against sand, the eternal pulse of ocean breathing that has lulled travelers to sleep for countless generations. Let your mind drift now like a small boat on calm waters, no longer concerned with navigation or destination, but simply floating with the current, feeling the gentle rock and sway of water supporting you as you surrender to the natural rhythm that connects all living things to the vast oceanic heart of our planet. The mysteries we've explored together tonight need no urgent resolution. They are not problems demanding immediate solutions, but gifts of wonder that enrich our understanding of the world's infinite complexity. Flight 19. And the brave aviators who disappeared on that December afternoon in 1945 have become part of the Triangle's eternal story, their courage and dedication remembered not as tragedy, but as testament to the human spirit's willingness to venture into the unknown. The ships that have sailed these waters across 5 centuries of exploration carry with them the dreams and hopes of all who have ever felt the call of distant horizons. From Columbus's wooden caravels to modern cruise ships, from Spanish treasure galleons to sleek racing yachts, each vessel has added its own chapter to the ongoing story of human interaction with the sea's magnificent mystery. The theories we've considered, ancient civilizations sleeping beneath the waves, extraterrestrial visitors using the triangle as a cosmic way station, government researchers probing secrets that might transform human understanding, natural phenomena of breathtaking power and beauty, all remind us that reality is always richer and stranger than our current knowledge can encompass. The scientific explanations that illuminate the triangle's natural complexity don't diminish its wonder, but enhance it, revealing weather systems of staggering power, ocean currents that carry the warmth of the tropics toward the poles, magnetic fields that connect us to the molten heart of our planet, geological formations that tell stories spanning millions of years, each discovery opening new vistas of appreciation for the world's magnificent design. Let the triangle's greatest lesson wash over you now, like warm water lapping at a peaceful shore. That mystery and knowledge are not enemies but companions. That wonder and understanding can coexist like day and night, each making the other more beautiful by contrast. That our world remains a place of genuine magic and beauty, where natural forces create phenomena more amazing than any supernatural theory could suggest. Feel your breathing slow to match the rhythm of distant waves, your heartbeat gradually synchronizing with the eternal pulse of the ocean, your thoughts becoming as fluid and peaceful as the currents that have carried countless vessels safely through these legendary waters. The triangle continues its ancient work, hosting the daily passage of aircraft and ships whose journeys remind us that courage and wonder are humanity's greatest gifts, welcoming new generations of explorers and dreamers who will discover their own mysteries in these waters, preserving space for imagination and curiosity in a world that sometimes seems too thoroughly mapped and measured. Tomorrow, the sun will rise again over these Atlantic waters. Planes will cross the sky following invisible highways marked by GPS satellites. Ships will move cargo and passengers along routes that connect continents and cultures. Scientists will continue their patient work of understanding the natural forces that shape our world. And somewhere, perhaps, new mysteries will emerge to challenge our assumptions and expand our sense of what's possible. But tonight belongs to wonder, to the gentle rocking motion of imagination, floating on an ocean of possibility, to the peace that comes from accepting that some questions are more beautiful than any answer could be, to the profound relaxation that flows through minds that have touched the edge of mystery and found not fear, but fascination. Let your consciousness drift now, like moonlight on water, no longer focused on details or analysis. Simply aware of the vast, interconnected beauty of a world where ocean meets sky, where human courage encounters natural grandeur, where the known and unknown dance together in eternal partnership. The triangle's waters stretch peacefully toward every horizon, carrying with them the stories of all who have passed this way, the dreams of those who will come after, the quiet certainty that wonder will always find a home in hearts open to receive it. Sleep now, gentle traveler, your journey through mystery complete. your mind at peace with questions that need no urgent answers, your spirit enriched by contact with the magnificent puzzle of our world. Let the triangle's eternal waters carry you safely into dreams where mystery and beauty reign eternal, where wonder waits like treasure on every distant shore. The ocean breathes, in and out, in and out, carrying you deeper into peaceful rest, where all mysteries resolve into the simple truth that our world is more beautiful than we ever dared imagine, more complex than we can fully understand, more worthy of wonder than any single lifetime could exhaust. Rest now, in the knowledge that mystery is not something to be feared, but treasured, that questions can be more valuable than answers, that the triangle's greatest secret is not supernatural danger, but natural beauty beyond measure. Beauty that surrounds us always, beauty that calls us home to wonder, beauty that sings us gently to sleep on the eternal rhythms of the sea.